We are live.
Hello.
Welcome.
How's everyone?
Hello. Chat's popping off.
Alrighty. Good morning, Amazon world. Alrighty. Well, welcome everyone to the core webinar. Thanks for coming. Let's just jump right into it, shall we? Let's jump into the 4 biggest problems with Amazon PPC in 2024. Here we go. So to celebrate that, core is an open enrollment for the next week. Here is a little sampling of some of the stuff that we do each week inside core. So jumping in to one of my favorite things, which is the ACOS Power Ratio. Inside the ACOS Power Ratio, it allows you to sort of measure your ad spend like you'd never have before. So it's one of my favorite hidden ratios inside Amazon. And it basically works like this. So let's take a typical scenario where you spend $10,000 in a single month for your advertising. And let's say you generate $50,000 worth of sales. Terrific, right? This is a really good ACOS for most people. This might be 20%, and that's great. However, what if this happened? What if you ended up realizing that you're actually wasting half of your budget and that you could have had a 10% ACOS? And this scenario is actually incredibly common, where regardless of what your ACOS is, whether you think it's high or whether you think it's low, there's a big percentage of your clicks that you spend money on that are actually non-converting. And this is a famous quote by the one and only John Wanamaker, where half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half it is. So this spreadsheet that I'm about to sort of go over and this concept allows you to really understand what half is actually wasted. So if we were to sort of translate this into PPC terms, every campaign I know has non-converting spend. I just don't know which ones are wasting money or have a quick way to identify which campaigns they are. So here's one problem. If you have an account, and even if it has a good ACOS, how do you know that the good ACOS isn't being masked or masking really underperforming areas of your account? Because even if you have what you consider a good ACOS on the account level, you don't want, if you have a 25% ACOS and you think it's great, you don't want to be wasting tens of thousands of dollars, a big percentage of your ad spend on non-converting things. Because, when faced with those options, an ACOS of 25% or an ACOS of 15%, you would want to pick the lower ACOS every single time. So essentially what that means is, hey, Brent, my friend, I think you're typing very loud.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was muted.
Nope. Heard the typing.
Typing syndrome.
Yes. So basically, the other problem too, which a lot of people don't understand, is, should you be on the gas or should you be on the brake? Should you be cutting the fat? Should you be trimming the account down, trying to make it a little bit smaller and more efficient? Or should you be in account expansion and sort of conquest mode, looking for new keywords? And finally, the third problem, that non-converting spend is a part of life, but like how much is too much? Like how much of your ad spend should be non-converting? And this is why we have the ACOS Power Ratio. It's really what you need in order to understand your non-converting spend. And I absolutely love it. Big inspiration by the Lynn Radnitsky team, which are these two guys from Google Ads. And essentially what they did for Google Ads was they took the CPA, which stands for cost per acquisition, for all their search terms. And then they put that over of the CPA for all search queries with at least one conversion or more, giving us the Lynn Radnitsky ratio. So bringing it over to Amazon, it's basically the performance of entities that did convert versus the entities that did not convert, and then comparing the difference. So essentially what we have here is if we take the ACOS of all search terms divided by the ACOS of search terms with at least one order or more, we'll end up with something like this. So your account level ACOS might be 25%, but the things that you actually got conversions on might be 10%. So if you didn't have any non-converting spend, you'd end up with an ACOS Power Ratio of 2.5 in this scenario. Let's take a look at 4 different scenarios, and what the sheet that I will give you is exactly this. This will actually allow you to basically see every single scenario that you could be in, the spreadsheet that I'm about to share at the end. So let's just break down some of these concepts really quick. So there's 4 different scenarios we're going to look at. Low ACOS Power Ratio, sort of a middle range ACOS Power Ratio, and then a high ACOS Power Ratio. And essentially, it's a spectrum from left to right. On the left, we have an account that is way too tight. It's not testing enough. It's not going after anything new. It's not trying to conquest. It's not trying to grow its market share. And on the right side is an account that did that way too much, and it's wasting way too much money. It's way too loose. It's way too wild. It's way too aggressive. So it allows you to sort of get a sense of where you land. So let's take a look at the too tight scenario. The too tight scenario is where you might spend $10,000. You might have $50,000 of revenue, and your account level ACOS is 20%. And you might have almost no non-converting spend. So imagine in this could never happen, but imagine you had almost no non-converting spend. You only had $100 of non-converting spend, which means of your $10,000 budget, $9,900 went towards things that converted. Only $100 went towards things that did not convert. So the ACOS of your converting spend is like 19.8, and then 19.8 over 20% is 1.01. So you end up with a very, very low ACOS ratio, essentially one where you wasted no money. Now, this is good in terms of you're not wasting any money, but it's bad in the sense of you're not going after anything new. You're not trying anything. You're not breaking new ground. You're not pushing it any further. And likely your competition will overtake you because they are willing to do those things. If we go into these middle scenarios, same $10,000 spent, same $50,000 of revenue, same 20% ACOS. Here, we end up with $4,000 of non-converting spend and $6,000 of converting spend. If I take that ACOS, if I only spent money on the things that converted, I'd have a 12% ACOS. So I put 20% and 12%, and that's a ratio of 1.67. If we just get a little bit more aggressive, and I'll jump all the way to the right side here to an account that is way too loose, you would not want a scenario like this, where you spend $10,000, you generate $50,000 of revenue, but you had $7,000 of wasted spend, giving you an ACOS Power Ratio of 3. So essentially, the more you spend on non-converting things, the further away this ratio gets from 1. So essentially, most good accounts that you'll see are going to be somewhere in the middle. A typically great account cannot have an ACOS Power Ratio of 4 or 5, where the ACOS differences is a multiple of 4 or 5. And it's generally not very close to 1, because accounts that are pretty good and large and gaining market share and has an appropriate ACOS, you generally see them in a range of anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5. So you basically lay this out. When your ACOS Power Ratio is very close to 1, that means you're very conservative. And you can use this as like a diagnosis tool where you say, okay, when I'm really close to 1, that's my time to step on the gas. I'm going to be launching campaigns. I'm going to be going after different match types, going after riskier bets like high ACOS initiatives, like trying to rank for a competitor term or ASIN targeting, really step on the gas. When I'm in sort of this middle range of 1.5 to 2.5, I'm in a generally good place. My ACOS is probably good, and I can sort of step on the gas a little bit. Or if I'm at the higher end of that range, I know that I have a good balance of spend, aggressiveness, going after market share without wasting too much. So this scenario, if you were to sort of run this analysis in your own account, and I'm about to show you the spreadsheet in a second, hopefully you land somewhere between 1.5, 2.5, which I think is really good. So what this spreadsheet does is not only does it tell you the account level, but it also lets you analyze per campaign, which I absolutely love. So if you're on this webinar, just be checking your email. You'll get access. We'll send this out. And basically, all you have to do is you just download your search term report. And this spreadsheet works for sponsored products and sponsored brands. So you download that search term report. Hopefully we all know how to do that. And then all you need to do is paste in 4 columns, just the campaign name, the ad group name, the spend, and the sales. So this is basically the spend and sales on a per search term basis. And then all you do is paste those 4 columns in, and you get this. You get the ACOS Power Ratio for your sponsored products and your sponsored brands. And it'll essentially break it down. And this is from actually a real account where basically sponsored product spend was $72,000. The revenue was $261,000. The ACOS was pretty good at 27%. And if I shifted that to look at how much I spent on things with no orders, it was $54,000. So even though the account level ACOS was good, 27%, I was actually spending $54,000 on things that didn't have an order. So my ACOS Power Ratio, you can see it down here, was 4.1. If I didn't spend anything on non-converting spend, I'd have an ACOS of 6.7. So it's telling me the difference between my account level ACOS of 27 and my actual ACOS of things that did convert was 6.7. And that's a difference of multiple of 4.1. So it's just a little bit too loose. So then I can jump into my ACOS Power Ratio per campaign. And what this does, it tells me every single one of my campaigns, how much I spent on them. What's the revenue of those campaigns? What was the campaign level ACOS? And then I can see how much did I spend in that campaign with no orders? How much did I spend with orders? And then basically I can see the ACOS Power Ratio on a per campaign basis. And then I can spot campaigns like this. Take a look at this 4th one down. I spent $806. I had, $7,800 in revenue. So that's a pretty good ACOS. But look how much I was wasting. $761. That's an ACOS Power Ratio of 18. So it's basically allowing me to identify almost $1,000 of things that I'm spending money on with no orders that I can probably cut and turn this into, 5% ACOS campaign instead. So really, really helpful. Take a look at this one. One really bad offender, $34,000 in spend, $25,000 in revenue. My ACOS Power Ratio is way up there at 19. So way, way above like the 3 or 4 that you'd want to see for a sort of a reasonable pairing of account level ACOS or campaign level ACOS, and then the ACOS of things with orders. So I absolutely love this. This is sort of a sampling of a presentation I gave inside Core way back in November. So a copy of this, if you're a Core member and you're watching this, there's already a copy for you waiting inside Core in our sort of call history. And if you're watching this webinar and you're on our list, we'll send out an email later today with this spreadsheet. And if you'd like to join Core, we're open for the next week. We just open it up for a week here and there. We haven't been open for a year, and I'm really excited about it. So thank you so much. And now I will turn it over to this guy. What's up, Gonza?
How's it going, everyone? Thanks, Mike. That was such an important tool. I did not know about that ratio before you shared it in Core. It has done a big or had a great impact in the way we optimize at the agency. And it's incredible because the more sellers or accounts you handle, the more you realize that people don't know really where their monies are being spent and how efficiently. And I was thinking to myself, in your example, I won those $54,000 as a seller. There are so many places that you can spend or things you can spend those 54 grand in your business to grow it, and not write that check to Amazon without any results. So that's how impactful that is. For the ones that are joining now that were in the beginning, today, Mike is sharing this powerful tool that you can apply to any account. I'm going to talk about how to beat like the 1%. I will discuss with you guys and I'll show you how very few of us are bidding and why it creates a huge difference in terms of campaign performance. And if you stay until the end, the wonderful and knowledgeable Elizabeth Green will be talking about, or will be debunking some ACOS myths, right? Especially why high ACOS can lead to more profit. You heard that well, you heard that right. Mike, do I have full control? Yes, ready to go?
Go for it.
So as I said, I'm going to be talking about bidding like the 1%, which means using mathematical models to bid, kind of like thinking and acting like a software, but pretty much, most importantly, understanding how Amazon gauges your campaign performance and fitting the data that Amazon likes to see in the way that Amazon loves to see it. The big question here is how you optimize your sponsored product campaigns. Most people that I know, 99% of sellers, advertisers, and their agencies, especially agencies, because they are handling a huge workload, they normally do a manual optimization or they upload bulk files. But they eyeball their bids. They're looking at, this is how they do it, right? They look at the campaign performance in the dashboard or on a report. They look at the overall KPIs, the impression share, the on top of search, the total impressions, clicks, ACOS, and especially ACOS, right? We are kind of, our mental framework revolves around ACOS as the number one KPI for campaign performance. And they look at the bid after that, and they open the placement dashboard, or they look at a placement report, and they look at the ACOS on all three placements. And then they decide whether to increase the bid, the base bid, or to increase play with top of search, rest of search, and product page multipliers, which is fine. Most people do that. In many cases, you do it on a report and you eyeball the changes. You go up or down, a few cents or a percentage, right? And you don't do the actual math. So this is what I call eyeballing a bid, right? You look at the results that I just showed you, the KPIs, and you go like, well, I'm going to increase this by 5 cents because it's below my target ACOS, or I'm going to reduce it by 5 cents or 5%. Some people use percentages, some people use cents. And then they do the same with the placement multipliers, right? By X amount each optimization round. It's fine. It's working for most people. It is eyeballing your changes. And most importantly, you never can be sure about what the results will be, especially on that magic word ACOS, right? So that's not how the 1% bids. That is not how we recommend here at Core to bid. The reason for this is you need to be in control of your campaign results, and you need to have an intention and bid with such intention on every placement. And that's the way Amazon wants you to bid. Amazon does not want you to bid the way we normal people bid. So you need to start with a lot of data. Normally, before going into that, especially in the last, I would say 18 months, the amount of data that a campaign has to have in order for Amazon to assess campaign performance, it has been increasing. I talked to an Amazon advertising rep. They now think campaign performance peaks at 95 days. And what they love as data is 180 days, which is 6 months. And a lot of us are not even leaving campaigns running for 6 months. We turn them on and off, or we switch them. We start fresh ones. So we need to be very mindful, especially today, about the amount of data that we need to assess campaign performance, but most importantly, to make bidding decisions. So this is how Amazon looks at your campaigns. It assesses performance and decides how many impressions your campaigns will get, and most importantly, at which price. This is something that we'll talk about a little bit towards the end of the presentation. So Amazon, as I said, needs to have enough data in all three placements in order to assign a quality score to each one. And then it draws a overall quality score for the campaign itself. And this is the reason campaigns take some time to gain impressions, as I said, even at higher CPCs. A great example is you're launching a brand new supplement, for example, and you're throwing bids of $10 in there, $7, $10, $11. Nothing happens. You get no impressions. Why? Because there are others, your competitors, that have campaigns running with amazing quality score, making money, millions of dollars. Why on earth will Amazon give you those impressions, no matter how much you're willing to pay? You need to show performance. You need to show up for yourself and show performance to Amazon and hold that for a number of days. And that's the reason why, as those campaigns are running, they tend to perform better and better. And that's observable, and we all see that, right? So how will Amazon measure campaign performance? How will Amazon decide how many impressions should be assigned to your particular campaign? And how will Amazon decide what to charge you for each click? This is what we're going to look into today. So your goal here is to show Amazon that you have a balanced campaign, unless, of course, you're going for something very specific, like a top of search only campaign, which a lot of people love to do. I don't personally recommend that for a number of reasons. We can talk that within the community. But especially in the beginning, I love creating campaigns that show Amazon performance on all placements. And then if I want to concentrate on top of search because my particular product demands it, I do it at a later time. But ideally, you need to show Amazon good performance in all three placements, because if one day you decide to go top of search only, Amazon has to understand and agree with you that, yeah, these guys are making me a lot more money on top of search. They want more top of search. There you go. I'll give it to them, right? So Amazon will check and assign quality score to your top of search performance, right? And it'll compare it with your competitors on the same placement. So it's doing apples to apples, pears to pears, and strawberries to strawberries, depending on the placement, right? And it'll compare CTR, which is how your impressions are turned into clicks. That has to do with your price, has to do with your main image, has to do with your title. Then it'll obviously measure sales, conversion rate, which is super important as a measure of campaign success. And something that most sellers don't think about is your average order value, among other things, like how much inventory you're holding, et cetera, et cetera. And it'll compare this over time, 7 days, 30 days, 90 days, et cetera, et cetera. It'll do the same with product pages, the same with rest of search. And only then it will decide, okay, this is how much money this campaign is making me, Amazon. This is how many impressions I'll assign to this campaign for tomorrow's time frame. So we advertisers, we look at the overall campaign performance. Amazon does not care about that particular number. It means nothing to them. It's just an average of individual placement performance. So thinking about optimization in terms of that overall ACOS is not really important, and you should not think that way. So let's look at this example, right? I'm using a campaign that created a lot of impressions, clicks, and sales. This is last year, September. And this is a scenario that most people, the people within Core, they do this, they understand this, and they optimize this way. But more often than not, I talk to people that are not looking at campaigns this way. And I'll give you a short description of what I mean. So look at this campaign. It has spend balance, impression balance, and ACOS balance, which means it has there's a party going on in all three placements, right? So top of search is spending 95% of the total campaign spend, but it only has almost 8%, a little bit less than 8% of the total impressions, and it has a great ACOS, the lowest of all three placements. Normally, and I talk with people within my team, the first thing when we're training, the first thing I tell them is don't panic when you see 71% ACOS on product pages. Because if you look at the amount of spend, it's only 4% of the spend. Amazon understands this. Amazon is not worried about it. You should not be worried about it, because that 71% is not impacting your overall campaign performance. It's just not moving that needle, right? But it is giving you 91% of all impressions, 91%. So for the search term X, you have a 91% of impressions within the campaign on your product pages. If you choke that, unnecessarily, because it's not hurting your performance, if you choke that, someone else will get those impressions. So in this case, I would use that as a defensive measure. Keep those impressions, increase your impression share for every search term, because the goal here is to always dominate a search term, which is what ultimately will result in you paying less for it over time. So if you don't treat each campaign as if it was 3 different campaigns, you're not optimizing your campaigns accurately. You're not fighting the best fight against your competitors. And if your competitors are optimizing like the 1%, most probably they're beating you. How? Those are the ones that you're always wondering, how can someone withstand a $3 or $4 CPC within this category? How are people making money? Well, I'm pretty sure that they're not paying $4 a click. They're maybe paying $1.7 a click, and you are paying $3 a click because you haven't proven Amazon for as long as they have that you can bring them the business they're bringing Amazon. So this is the scenario just described. Most people or sellers that I know and I talk to don't think about this. They don't think it's possible. Just a quick comparison. We sold 598 units with a conversion rate of 35%, and our average order value was $29.8. And the scenario is, what if competitor X gets more impressions than us, and they receive, let's say, 2,200 clicks, and they get 850 sales with an average order value of $31 or $32, which is a higher conversion rate, by the way, than the one that we had with a cheaper product. Over time, competitor X can get even more impressions, even more clicks, and pay much less than $3.53, which is what we pay for, and selling much more product and making money like crazy and more money to Amazon. So if you have experienced campaigns that get lower CPCs over time, that is because you're proving to Amazon that you outperform your competitors and you make them more money, and you put products faster because you have inventory in the hands of their customers. So that is it. There is no Amazon mystery. That is how things work. So how do you bid like the 1%? How do you apply this mathematical model? Well, there are many. I learned one from Mike, actually, which is the revenue per click model. It prompts me to do another set of math. So I use this one. I use the target ACOS and current ACOS and CPC model, which is dividing the target ACOS in decimal by the current ACOS in decimal multiplied by the current CPC, and that gives you a bid that you should be placing to get the target ACOS. Provided that obviously your conversion rate remains the same, that you don't change your price, and no one else is running, stupid high discounts or anything that can hurt your conversion rate. And you're thinking probably, well, I need to do this for every single placement. Well, yes, that's the bad news. The good news is that you don't need to do this for every single campaign. You just focus on those 5 or 6 keywords that bring you 80-90% of the traffic. If you think that is also time consuming because you have a lot of products, a lot of campaigns, maybe a lot of different brands that you're managing, well, that's bad news. I don't have a workaround other than maybe using software for those optimizations. But if you don't do it and your competitors are doing it, the results that you will have are not going to be great. So how do you do this? Number one, you apply a base bid that's a bit lower than the suggested range. I like to do that because I like to be able to manage the 3 placements with the multipliers. In this case, our campaign target ACOS is 45, and product pages are already showing there that they're 49%. Top of search is 47%, and I want to nail it down to 45%. So we use the formula to calculate the right bid for target ACOS in all 3 placements. And then we move the placement modifier, right? And we do it with intention, basing our decision on, do we want to dominate this keyword? Do we want to be ranked number 1 in impression share? Do we want to hold PPC number 1 rank? Do we want to rank organically? So the level of aggressiveness and what you're going for with each placement needs to be decided according to what you want to do with the product. And how do we do this math? Well, at Core, we have a file, a multiplier or a calculating file, which we will share with you guys at the end of the call. And basically, it has 2 historical models. One is the one that I mentioned, the revenue per click. I use the one on the right, which is historical data optimization 2, I call it. And then you enter the target ACOS on that cell. You enter the current ACOS. Notice that it's in decimal. And then the CPC that you see in that placement, whatever resulting CPC is, and it'll give you your bid, right? If you're launching a new campaign, you don't have any data, you can use a third model that's here included in the file, which is the expected value. All you need to do is kind of think about what the expected conversion rate will be. You know this from your category and previous campaigns, the product's price and the target ACOS, and it'll give you your bid. And that's a good start, and my recommendation will be to start with a bid for all 3 placements. Don't go crazy with placement modifiers in the beginning, in the first couple of weeks. Let Amazon run its numbers, and then start optimizing then. And number 3, for each placement, you look at what the bid you put the basic bid there, and then you let the calculator file tell you what's the modifier for that particular placement. And you do this 3 times per campaign. It's a pain in the neck, I understand, but it's the most accurate way of bidding, and it works. So this is basically what I just described, and that's how you bid like the 1%. Why is the 1%? Well, because it's labor intensive. Not a lot of people do it. Only a few people do it. And it is the most accurate way of controlling, of bidding and controlling campaign performance on all 3 placements. And trust me, guys, it pays off. So by doing this, you aim at winning the auction on each placement, right? Each placement. So you're the winner on each particular placement, and you bid it with intention. So here's kind of the summary of what you do by doing this. You capture as much impression share as possible per placement. You increase the campaign's quality score as much as possible per placement. You increase your PPC ranking, right? You increase your ASIN's conversion share. You can take a look at this in brand analytics. And to hold this effort over time, you dominate the search term. And by doing that, you rank organically, right? So you hold this for, long enough, and you get reduced CPCs. And now you're getting more traffic, as I said before, than your competitors, and you're paying less. So it's harder for them to take those impressions and that traffic away from you. But not harder, but at least more expensive. A little word of caution: if you're not applying mathematical models and you start running this, and the file tells you that you need to increase your placement modifier by, 200%, 600%, be cautious. Don't do it all of a sudden. Don't do it very quickly. Take maybe a couple of weeks with daily optimizations to, make those changes very slowly, because Amazon does not like these big changes. They need to assess campaign performance at each particular change of bid that you make. So go slow. If you haven't been doing this, don't go crazy. And that's pretty much it. That's how you bid like the 1%.
Wow, Gonza, thank you. I always love a good deep dive into bidding strategies and bidding ways to inform what you type in that box when we set our bids. Now let's hand it over to the one and only Elizabeth Green.
Awesome. Well, that was an insanely deep dive, Gonza. And so what I'm going to talk about today is kind of a layer above that. So Gonza was talking about optimizing bids, and he also touched on some of the points that I'm going to touch on in a second, which was things like the average order value and how cost per clicks and conversion rates and things play into ACOS. So I'm calling this presentation the ACOS myth, and it's basically why chasing low ACOS is costing you sales. And then more importantly, not only are we going to talk about the problem, the underlying root causes of the problem, we're going to talk about how you can approach it from a more holistic view in a way that helps you actually grow your account and not hurt your account. And then, of course, I said the rest of sort of the presentations really kind of play into a lot of the nuts and bolts of this. Cool. So the sort of ACOS myth, or like this issue, is really based on this underlying premise that lower ACOS equals greater profits. And the thought is, if I have high ACOS, therefore I am losing money. If I have low ACOS, I am making money. And so there's this continuous optimization for ACOS. Now, I do not think that I'm going to say in this presentation that we need to completely throw ACOS out the window. That is not the case. ACOS is a really important metric to evaluate when looking at your account or doing any sort of optimization, but it needs to be looked at in the context of what it actually tells you. And the thing about ACOS is we'll get into the breakdown of the numbers in a second, but it really is strictly looking at your advertising account, nothing more. And the problem with that is that your ads actually touch on more and they influence more than just whatever ad sales you're making. And that brings us into the next point about how Amazon ads increase ranking. Now, for the OGs in the audience, this is going to be a recap of everything you already know, but I do think it's really important to talk about and frame this conversation as like how Amazon advertising helps you increase ranking. What are the nuts and bolts of that? And so ranking is determined by quite a few things, which Gonza touched on in his presentation as well. Things like relevancy to the product. That's why you're never going to see, socks rank on keywords like running shoes. Amazon has fail-safes in place that it doesn't matter what kind of order velocity you get. If it's not going to make sense in relation to that shopper search, Amazon is not going to show you there. That's why sometimes if you've ever tried to target keywords that are giftable or maybe a little bit outside of your norm, you really just struggle to gain impressions. That's intentional from Amazon's perspective because they're looking for a good consumer experience. But the benefit to us and the fact that Amazon is looking for that good consumer experience, what they're using to determine that is, of course, like you said, categories and association with keywords. But the one thing that they're looking at the closest is shopper interactions, and more importantly, shopper interactions through a particular search page. And the way that this works is this is always defined on an individual shopper search. That's why there's a lot of people who say hey, how is my competitor outranking me because I'm making more sales than them? I can look at everything else and I can look at my BSR and I'm like, my BSR is way better than them. I'm making better sales in this category. What gives? Yes, you are making better sales in total, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're making better sales through that individual shopper search. So this goes by a search grid basis. And that is really how Amazon ads influence that. Because what Amazon looks at is, conversion rates, click-through rates, add to cart, all positive shopper experiences. But the most positive shopper interaction is, of course, somebody actually putting their credit card down and making the purchase. So that's what Amazon looks for. And so they also look for a sustained orders, which means that you're not going to all of a sudden blow up orders 1 hour and immediately rank to the top of the page. And then the next day you have 0 orders. They're saying, do shoppers consistently purchase this product when they find it in this search grid? And then a benefit to us, and this is the way that Amazon advertising really plays into this, is you can target keywords. You can target shopper searches. And so you can appear in that search grid through a advertisement as well as say on organic ranking. And then basically if somebody clicks on your ad or if they click on your organic ranking, they're still interacting with the product in relation to that search page. And then ideally that click leads to a purchase, which is where conversion rates come in, which Gonza also touched on as well. And that, of course, so what I say is your advertising sort of adds to the cumulative sales and orders that you're making through a particular keyword. That is also the reason why if you've been in a launch phase, right, and you've run aggressive advertising and maybe ACOS has been higher than you wanted to, but you realize, hey, I'm in a launch phase right now, right? I know that this is kind of the name of the game, so I got to get those orders up. I see my rankings climb, all things are good, and then you go, oh my gosh, okay, this is way too high, ACOS is too high. Again, thinking that ACOS equals profits is not necessarily the case. We'll talk about a number that kind of zooms out and puts everything in relation to each other. And so they're like, all right, I need to optimize, right? How do you optimize? you lower your bid. So Gonzo went through a huge extensive process of like, hey, here's a really mathematical and detailed way. You might be doing it detailed, you might not be, but either way, you lower your bids, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, my rankings are gone. What gives? Well, that's because you lowered your visibility in search, and we're going to talk about, again, kind of the nuts and bolts of that. But that is how Amazon advertising influences your sort of organic ranking, and why ACOS might not necessarily be I don't want to say like the best evaluation metric, but the only evaluation metric that you're going to be looking at. And so to kind of like make sense of this for myself, Gonzo went through some detailed mathematics. Michael did as well. That's one of the things with the group. Like, we get into tactics. I'm always looking at ways like, okay, so how do I break down and make sense of this number in a way that tells me what I need to do? Because ACOS, if general, we all know it's ad spend divided by ad sales. And so one day I was like, okay, so like, how do I understand the relation of conversion rates and how that plays into my ad performance? And like, what is it that I can do as an advertiser to really affect this? And so I came up with this equation. Honestly, there's probably others in the space. It's not any rocket science, but it's your cost per click multiplied by 1 divided by your conversion rate. 1 divided by your conversion rate says, how many clicks on average does it take me to convert an order? So if I have 10 clicks and I'm paying $1 a click, I'm paying $10. That's my ad spend. So this breaks down my ad spend. And then on the flip side, if we're looking at how much we're making, so ad spend divided by ad sales, you can break down your ad sales by what is my sale price. So how much I'm paying on average per click, how many clicks on average does it take me to convert to a purchase? And then when I do convert that purchase, how much am I making on average? And this is where the struggle gets in when it comes into optimization, is really from an advertiser standpoint, the one thing that you're looking to change is this CPC. Because the sale price really goes into what price you have on the product, right? That's probably not something you're controlling as an advertiser. Maybe yes, maybe no, maybe as a brand owner. But typically speaking, we're not making wild changes to our sale price, because that also affects conversion rates and a ton of other things and profitability. And then on a conversion rate standpoint, now there are ways you can optimize for what is converting best. Ganja just went through a lot of tactics here. Another tactic here is looking at all of the targets you're advertising on and saying, what is my best converting target, and optimizing for that. That's not a bad thing. But really, when it comes to looking down on a how can I get better ACOS for this individual keyword, it's lowering your bid, which is effectively trying to lower your CPC. And so if that's the one thing that we need to do, it seems very logical, right? But we just talked about the scenario where I'm ranking, I'm doing okay, but then I lower my bids to optimize, and all of a sudden ranking's gone. So how in the world can you sort of fix this scenario? Because again, the one thing that we're doing is we're optimizing our bids. And you can see in this graphic, like here, we would look at something, and we're going to come back to this in a second after we've talked kind of through this, but it's like 107% ACOS. Well, it's way too dang high, right? So when we look at that, oh my goodness, unprofitable, ACOS equals profits. What am I doing? My action item is bid optimization, lower my bid, right? Or this 90+% ACOS, way too high, decrease the bid, right? And so that's really what we're looking to do when it comes to optimizations. And I'm not saying we're not going to optimize the bid. Again, Gonzo went through a really detailed metric, but I'll also talk about some benchmarks and how you might go about adjusting, like looking at targets in a slightly different way as far as like impact on your overall sales account. Because the thing that makes this so difficult is Amazon PPC is an auction. So what does that mean? It's honestly kind of insane, the calculations that are done on the back end. As soon as a shopper types in a search, before that page even loads, when the fractions of a second, Amazon is analyzing what products are eligible to be shown in this auction, who has an ad structure that is available for this, what are their metrics in terms of, now they're even calculating in placement percentages and all of these other things. And then what they're also doing is they are looking at people's bids. Who is eligible for this ad auction? How much are they willing to pay? And then your ad spot on that page is determined by a lot of things, relevancy, quality score, and everything else. But a huge factor of that is your bid. And so if you have a high bid, you are going to show up in search. But the problem is if you lower the bid, you're going to show up lower in search. If you're showing up lower in search, that means less traffic. Less traffic means less clicks mean less orders. And so if we talked about ranking as a function of how many orders am I generating through this search term, and we lower our visibility and we're lowering our traffic, then we have less cumulative sales. So if you have good organic rankings, you're still being found on that page, but is your organic visibility and those organic clicks enough to sustain your order velocity relative to your competitors on that particular search page? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but unfortunately what a lot of advertisers find is that the answer is no. And so what I've just described is a scenario where you're like, great, Elizabeth, you're telling me to never ever lower my bids and I'm always going to have to deal with high ACOS and like, just don't worry about ACOS. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying be strategic and intentional with what you're doing. So I just described a rock and a hard place, but I'm going to show you how in some ways, if you play the system right, you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, but it comes down to understanding the impact of each target on your overall sales. I'm going to give you two approaches to sort of deal with this. Again, these are like a zoomed out thought process idea, and then you're going to use tactics like Michael talked about, like Gonza talked about, to like nuts and bolts optimization, but you can kind of use this structure as sort of like a filter when doing those types of optimizations. All right. So the two strategies are, one, understanding that not every single keyword is created equal, and then two, optimizing for total ACOS, not ACOS. And I'm actually going to get into how sometimes you can actually like increase your spend and total ACOS gets worse. Sometimes you can increase spend on things that have good ACOS and your total ACOS gets worse. And I'm going to tell you about why that could happen to you. And we'll get into some mathematics as well. All right. Not every keyword is created equal. If we're talking about order impacts, some of these are going to have a bigger impact on your account than another one. And you can see here, and this is something that I think some of us have felt the pains of in our beginning process of optimizing Amazon advertising. You go in, you say, okay, what has the most spend on it? What has the highest ACOS? Decrease these bids strictly to hit the target ACOS. And then you go into the account the next day and you're like, ACOS went up. What the heck? And the reason why is because ACOS, or the amount of clicks you are receiving, could have gone down, but typically a lot of times the amount of orders you're receiving or the amount of sales that you're receiving, and if it's ad spend divided by ad sales go down as ad spend goes down, ACOS remains the same or sometimes gets worse. And so what I kind of came up with, again, just through like going these scenarios, like, oh my gosh, what the heck did I do? And trying to piece through this, I was like, oh, okay. So if these targets have a high impact on my orders, again, this is strictly looking at the ad console. It's probably a good idea to look at a zoomed out view of, what are my main keywords? Where am I advertising those? You can look at it through that view as well. But you can see here in this screenshot, this is a perfect example. So you have this top keyword here that has over 100% ACOS. You might look at that and say it's way too high. I would 100% agree with that. But then I would also go into the order column and say, well, this one has 14 orders associated with it, which if you look at the screenshot is quite significant. We have, others that have a little bit higher orders, but this one has quite a big impact. So I am probably going to be optimizing this, and I, probably need to be a little bit more careful in this scenario. But if you look at the bottom one, again, over 90% ACOS, way too high, yes. And then if I go look at it and say, well, the relative orders for this are 3. So therefore, impact of this is not going to be as high. And the other thing to keep in mind, if we're sort of like being careful with things, and so basically what I'm telling you is that, hey, that 100% ACOS, probably we need to be a little bit more careful with how we're optimizing our bids here, maybe bringing it down more gradually. It is entirely possible to have high ACOS terms that you continuously run at a high ACOS in the account and still achieve overall ACOS KPIs for the account, or sometimes in an individual product level. And how you would do that is how much a high ACOS keyword is going to affect the total product or the account level ACOS is dependent on the percentage of the total spend here. So in this case, think of it as pieces of a pie. If you had one keyword that had 100% of your spend, was going to that one keyword, your account ACOS would equal that one keyword. If that one keyword now makes up only 10% or 5% of your total spend, then only 5 or 10% of your total spend is at that higher ACOS. So therefore, it's going to have a less of an impact on your overall account. And that kind of plays into what I just talked about the order volumes having an impact. So action items, you're still most likely going to lower the bids. It's still probably unacceptable to run at 100% ACOS, so we still need to lower the bids. Remember how we talked about it being an auction and how your bids having a significant impact on where you're going to show up in that search grid. So it's not necessarily what actions I'm going to take, lowering the bids, it's by how much. So the question is not the action, the question is by how much. And in the cases of things that have really high impact, I would say by how much is going to be much smaller than if I have something like, say, with this 3 orders here. One thing I do want to put as a caveat here, I don't have it as a screenshot anywhere, but you do want to be very careful because auto campaigns broad match are typically going to have by nature a higher order volume associated with that. So we have gone too far in this direction and say everything with an insane amount of orders, great, like these are our priority keywords. That will naturally lead you to optimize towards having all of your account running through broads and auto campaigns. And you do want to be very careful about this. So we actually have cross checks in what match type or what type of keyword is it, i.e. is it a ranking keyword or not? That would probably be another good thing to check here. Now, this one is going to be a little bit more of an advanced option, but there are some times where lowering your bids even by 5 cents can have a drastic impact of where you're showing up in that search grid. And sometimes just getting lower on the page, it is very dependent on that individual search. So unfortunately, I can't give you like a super mathematical equation for this because it's so varied. But there are some times you just need to retain a aggressive bid to be able to show up anywhere in search. So what's an ad manager to do, right? You're like, I have to sustain the high bids. But again, when I talked about pieces of a pie and parts of a whole, if I have high bids and I'm completely uncapping my campaign budgets, well, then that keyword is naturally going to start eating up more and more of my budget. And so if that ACOS is high, my overall account is going to become more and more skewed toward whatever the ACOS of that keyword is. So there is a sort of hybrid option to this, and this is leveraging budgets. Now, things to be careful of here. When you are limiting budgets, you are limiting the amount of potential clicks you are getting on this term. So you're still going to be limiting visibility. You're just not necessarily going to be limiting where you're showing up in search. And sometimes you can use this as an advantage. The other thing to be aware of is if you're capping the budget's set at the campaign level. So if you have multiple targets within this campaign, other priority targets you want to continuously spend on, this strategy, it works best if you have limited keywords, potentially even like single keyword campaigns. But we have found limiting budgets as sort of another option to, again, being able to sort of maintain aggression on certain keywords. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense to control spend at a bid level if you're dealing with intense market competition and it's a main keyword and the bid that you need to achieve the target ACOS you're looking for is just way too low to get any visibility whatsoever. Budgets can be a good option. All right. Talked about kind of like how nothing's created equal, leveraging sort of fast or slow optimizations depending on impact. How does this play into the overall account? So let's talk about optimizing for total ACOS, not ACOS, and why this actually can happen. So factors here, right? When we are lowering our bids, ideally we're lowering our ad spend. When we're lowering our ad spend to achieve better total ACOS, which is ad spend divided by total sales, you have to lower ad spend and either maintain or ideally grow your total sales. Well, again, I told you there's a factor in which you decrease. So if you decrease ad spend and at the same rate your total ACOS goes down, you've just, congratulations, you're making less sales and you have the same total ACOS. Not the ideal scenario. What we really need is total ad spend to go down even greater rate. I mean, ideally total sales being the same. Sometimes you get a little bit lower, but that's how you affect. Or if you are increasing ad spend, you want to increase ad spend and then have total sales increase. And how does that affect? That was through that whole ranking strategy that we kind of talked about and how ads influence ranking. So you can see being very strategic with what you're spending on is really, really important here. So you really should be factoring in the impact of ads on your total sales when making optimizations. And I'm going to go through a scenario where you actually could increase your ad spend, and two scenarios where what people are assuming is going to happen when they increase their ad spend, and then what actually happens. So I was trying to, this is a kind of tool we put together a little while ago, because I was trying to factor in like really demonstrate like why this is not the case, right? Because there's a lot of times people will go into the ad account and be like, oh, my ACOS looks great on this campaign. So they'll increase the budgets or they'll increase their bids and they'll do something. And they're like, oh, okay, so this went up. However, my total ACOS increased. Like what gives, right? I increased something that was performing really well. This dynamic does not make sense. The thing is, it comes down to what we call ad sale percentage. So basically, what percentage of your total sales is coming from your advertising? And the higher your ad sale percentage, the higher percentage of your total sales that are coming from ads, the closer your ACOS and your total ACOS are going to be to each other. This means if you are able to rank high through advertising, you get a higher amount of organic sales. You can see that growth, even if your ACOS is high, providing you still have a lot of organic sales to make up for that. You can actually have a better total ACOS while still maintaining, even if you have to maintain a little bit higher ACOS than you would prefer. And so this is a scenario in which you can see down at the bottom where it says like new tacos. So we introduced new ad spend. Now this is a significant increase in that ad spend. Say like our new ad spend was $50 and we're only spending like $100. That, you know, that's a pretty significant increase. And then what we'll see is this is kind of a number to play in, but we're saying like, what is the new ad sale percentage of this new ad spend? Are we expecting that this increase in $50 is going to be at the same rate of, 50% more organic sales coming from this new ad spend? Probably not in the beginning. Maybe have some new keywords we're ranking on. Maybe we're pushing into the market somewhere. Is this going to have the same impact on organic? Most times, at least in the beginning, no. So if we introduce this new ad spend, but the organic doesn't climb at the same rate, because that's not an immediate result most of the time, that's why you run into these scenarios. So our total ACOS was only 10%, and now it's jumped up to 11.43. We notice this, we still have the same ACOS. If you look at that top row where it says ACOS and that bottom row where it says ACOS remains the same, but we're still effective higher total ACOS. Here is another scenario. What if we introduce this ad spend, but notice instead of a 50% ad sale percentage, we had a 30% ad sale percentage. So this new addition of ad spend is actually going to lead to greater gains in organics. Well, if we go from what the ACOS was before to now, we now have an 8.1% total ACOS. So again, this ad spend is further impacting better organic ranking. Again, ACOS remains the same here. 20%. This is assuming this new spend is still at that same ACOS. So that is where, again, just kind of understanding these relationships to each other is really, really important. And why, if all you're optimizing is for ACOS, that could be impacting your organic ranking. And then that's going to lead you to actually being less profitable, because total ACOS is a better indication of profits than your ACOS. And the reason is, so it's about rethinking your ACOS. So ACOS is going to tell you how profitable your ads are. That is a factor, but it's not going to factor in the overall account impact. So in today's competitive market, unfortunately, that whole dynamic we were talking about bids being high and showing up high in search, your competitors are paying more. And that means if you want to gain that visibility, even the visibility you had 6 months ago, you're going to have to pay more. So in today's competitive market, it's really important just to evaluate your ad strategy holistically. And then doing that, you can avoid negatively impacting your growth.
Cool. Thanks, Liz. Guys, I'll take it from here in the last part. And this part has no equations or numbers or calculations or anything like that. So I think I actually have to share my screen, right, to get this one going. Yeah, cool. So core, why a community? I'm going to talk about some of the softer side of things. Can everyone see this fine? Is this going? All right, awesome. Yeah, so you don't have to go it alone with Amazon advertising. As we just kind of discussed from the 3 other members, the founding members here, there's a lot of complicated stuff going on these days with Amazon advertising. And with all the new options that are coming out, new features, new software, new tools, it continues to get more and more confusing. That hasn't changed. So why do we start core, and why do we think that together is better than alone? Well, here's what it's like if you go alone. You figure things out slowly. When you're with core or with another group like core, you can shortcut that learning. You can basically cut your time invested in half or in a quarter. You learn from your own mistakes when you're going it alone. We've all been there. We've all screwed things up and then said, well, I'll never do that again. And there's a quote that I read somewhere recently. It said, like, an idiot learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from the mistakes of others. And that's one of the things that we enjoy about core. We get to talk to each other and learn where we went wrong, and learn from another person instead of doing it ourselves. Another benefit of being part of a group. When you're alone, there's nobody to turn to for advice. You're just kind of like Googling around for things, looking on forums, like searching on LinkedIn or something like that. What we do with core is we post inside the community. We ask each other when we're on calls that are every Wednesday, like right at this time. We ask during weekly calls. We have presentations about it. And that is proved to be very powerful, because going back to the shortcut learning thing, you ask someone who's already been there and done that and learned the lesson, and then you're able to shortcut that. And then last part, connections, referrals, recommendations. I know starting on Amazon PPC, like back in the day, I didn't really have anyone I could turn to. I didn't have any referrals, didn't have any recommendations. And now with core, I can ask someone, hey, do you have a representative at Amazon that can do this, this, and this? Yeah, I can put you in touch with that person. Hey, do you know a software or a tool or a plugin that does this? Yeah, of course I do. We've tried this one, and this one, and we like this one the most. Okay, why? Because of this. Okay, great. Thank you. You just saved me hours and hours of Googling, trying things out, and struggling. So that's why we love being together in core. Another reason we like core is LinkedIn kind of feels like this. And much like professional wrestling, it might be entertaining, but at the end of the day, it's kind of a game, and everyone knows that's like a little bit fake. We're not fans of that. I mean, it's a great place to get a lot of information, but you can't really have a substantial conversation on LinkedIn. The way I think about LinkedIn and other social platforms for that matter is it's kind of like a river that's moving really fast. You can scoop your hand in and get some water, but that water is changing and the topic just goes along and is gone, like so much water. But what we're trying to do with core is build a place where there are substantial conversations that you can refer to 3, 4, 5 months later, using the search function or asking someone or having them tag you, whatever. And then you'll find that, and that'll still be valuable for you all those months later. Whereas LinkedIn, you might have contributed to a conversation. You might have had a great post on Facebook, and you can never find that again. And you can't link someone to it and say, oh, we already solved this problem here. Or, hey, new team member, we're going to train you. Go look at it here. With core, that's the intention, that we can have like a repository of everyone's knowledge that you can go back to again and again. And that is a benefit for us. So at core, we're more like this. Instead of professional wrestling, we're more like the table of elders with the abacus. And I just feel like my brain got a bit of an abacus workout just now with Liz, Mike, and Gonza with all the numbers. But this is us, right? We have the screens up. We're looking at all the stats. We're analyzing the charts. We're looking at the numbers. and we're having a discussion, we can come back to it later. Another thing that's makes core different and is something to highlight is this concept of like a guru versus a community, or an audience versus a community. So there's a couple of key distinctions here. And the four of us, we don't consider ourselves gurus, right? We are not your guru. We are not the person who's going to tell you this is how it should be on Amazon advertising. This is the way I do it, and this is the only way to do it. One thing that we really encourage at Core is disagreement, discussion, alternative viewpoints, and everyone kind of chiming in and giving their 2 cents on something. You won't have that in a community that's like just one person who knows everything. And of course, the problem with that is if that person doesn't know something, then no one's going to benefit. We're believers in the community model, which is, of course, everyone sharing with each other all the time and treating each other as peers, treating each other as equals, and coming at problems from different perspectives, maintaining an open mind, and kind of propagating that amongst anyone else who joins. So anyone who's new to join Core, your opinion is just as valuable as mine, is just as valuable as Gonza's. If you have evidence, data, solid reasoning to back these things up, we'll give anybody a shake and listen to anyone. And that's really valuable and something that's quite unique. So what's next? Well, I'm going to be running the onboarding call for new members on May 29th. So sign up and I'll see you on the 29th. This is going to be our second ever cohort joining Core. This is our first like reopening and relaunch since our first one. And we have a lot of ideas to evolve the community, and we welcome your ideas too. We have current members who have come to us with all kinds of interesting things, many of which we're considering and going to move forward on. So we have, a lot of like new things we're going to try in the community. And to steal an expression from Amazon, it's always day one. It feels like even as many months in as we are to Core, we still have a lot to do and like grow the community. So we're just very excited for that. I'm trying to share some of that excitement here. Cool. So Core is open for enrollment for the next week. Mike, Gonzo, Liz, anything else to say here?
Yeah, over the next few days, we'll definitely be sharing a lot more about what goes into Core, and I think what makes it really special. I mean, there's so many things, so many dynamics that come into building a community and running a community, so much so that we've actually had it closed for enrollment over the last year. And now we finally feel like it's at a point now where we can really begin to welcome the second class into it. So it's really, it is a really special place. It's a place where I go and I learn a whole bunch. And if anyone's made it this far into the webinar or is watching this now, you know, over the next few days, we'll be sharing a little bit more about how Core operates, some of the nuts and bolts of it. You know, what the format is. We do a mastermind every week. We have a forum 24/7. So we'll be going over it a little bit more, but I'll let Chris Rawlings over here. It's sort of, he just commented this. I don't know of a better knowledge community for Amazon PPC. Truly, that's so amazing. Thank you, Chris. That's partly because people like you are in it. So thank you for being you. And coming and sharing all your experience as well. So thank you. So if you're interested, go over to corecommunity.io. Check it out. Gonza, any final words? Elizabeth, Brent?
I want to press a couple
class.
of questions here. People are asking. Yes, welcome. People are asking if we're sharing the files that we used during the call. The answer is yes, for sure. That's the reason why we're doing this free and live webinar. You're going to be getting that via email. If you subscribe to this webinar, we have your email, and we'll send that to you later today, so you can start using them. And I urge you to use it because we pretty much covered all the basics, I want to say. There's so much about Amazon PPC advertising, but the basics are the basics. You know, how you bid, how you control where the spend is going, how you set up an ACOS or TACOS strategy. With those three basic systems, I would say, or notions, if you haven't been using those, you'll see immediate results if you start applying that. Those skills that we talked about today, you'll see immediate in your accounts, in accounts that you might be handling if you're handling accounts as a third-party operator. I urge you to use the files that we're going to be sending to see results, see for yourself how the notions and the knowledge that we're sharing in this community can affect your business.
All right, final comment comes from Jaime Sabogal.
That's a big one.
Come join the Jedi Core Alliance. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Be on the lookout for the next few days. Be sure to go to corecommunity.io. Get on the list because we're going to be sharing a couple more things over the coming days. And we'll be open for enrollment until the 28th. Have a good one, y'all. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.